So people are quiet quitting left and right. But wait a minute. First question you're probably having is, what exactly is quiet quitting? So basically it's just coasting at work with a new name. So the big question is, well, what's the big deal? Well, millions are seizing the opportunity on TikTok, basically giving themselves a little bit more personal time and cutting their work hours to what they're actually being paid for. Now, we're going to go into more details in just a little bit, including how the markets and entrepreneurs are reacting to that. Now, aside from that, we're also going to talk about what's on the top of everyone's mind. We're going to talk about inflation. Now, they're saying that it's cooling, but do you guys actually agree that inflation is cooling? Do you feel that prices are getting better where you're at? Are prices at Walmart, Target, Costco, Sam's Club getting any lower for you? Drop a quick comment down below. Let me know where you guys stand. Credit cards, housing, rental properties, nothing and no one is easing the foot off the gas. So the question is, are we in a recession? Should we expect company bankruptcies and worker layoffs pretty soon? I mean, we're already seeing layoffs in the hundreds and sometimes thousands per company, but will it reach 2008 recession levels of unemployment? Also, what can Congress do for small businesses and for working families? Are they really going to tax us more? Now, for more news and information on money, financial prepping, and survival, make sure to drop a like for the video. Also subscribe to the channel. Also want to thank you guys very much for the boots on the ground, dropping very helpful insider information in the comments. I read all your comments and I really appreciate you guys for that. So who here is tired of working so hard and getting very little reward? Yeah, me too. So it may be time for us to look into this TikTok trend of quiet quitting. But here, check this out.
Quiet quitting means that when somebody asks you to do something that's not in your contract, you don't do it.
The concept of quiet quitting,
not doing the job of 2 to 3 people, stuff like that,
is making some very loud noise on TikTok.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster. I'm going to tell you that.
First, let's define the idea, which one career coach says is really about priorities.
People aren't going above and beyond. They're not bending over backwards for their employers anymore and sacrificing their mental and physical health. They're doing what they're getting paid for.
Allison Peck has amassed hundreds of thousands of followers on TikTok, doling out professional career advice. She tells us quiet quitting doesn't apply to many people, whether they're trying to run a company or jumpstart a career. But for others, she says it makes a lot of sense, even if the name doesn't.
I wish it was called something different, because you're not quitting, you're taking care of yourself.
So what would you call this?
You're coasting. You're like carefully coasting.
Some speak about reclaiming control between work and personal life.
Like, isn't that just called working, like doing your job properly with a healthy boundary?
While others say it's partly about pay.
Quietly quitting for me is acting my wage and knowing that my time is valuable.
The viral trend coming at a time when a Gallup poll finds employee engagement has dipped for the first time in a decade, and the Great Resignation of workers post-pandemic has put a strain on many businesses. But some online warning that quiet quitting doesn't benefit most people in the long run.
Quiet quitting is literally wasting your time at this company and shooting yourself in the foot. So please don't do that. If you feel like you have no other choice, get a new job.
As for advice to employers about combating quiet quitting,
managers are really important, and that does start at the top. It's important to have the right kind of conversations at the right time so that people do know what's expected of them in their role and how their work connects to something bigger.
Conveying a sense of purpose and a mission to those who are also looking for fresh incentive is important too.
I still work just as hard. I still get just as much accomplished. I just don't stress and internally rip myself to shreds. And it's beautiful.
So quiet quitting is basically quitting the idea of always going above and beyond at work. So basically it's coasting, call it whatever you guys want, but it amounts to the same thing. Americans are tired of being taken advantage of, and they want the billionaire entrepreneurs and investors to actually make some cash flow happen for the workers instead of just for themselves and for their stock market buddies. Now, you guys know what I'm saying? Like, they're looking for a little bit more life-work balance or work-life balance. Basically, they're looking to take it easy, stop taking on the added responsibilities outside of the roles or the job's description, nor are they interested in working any extra hours. Definitely a sign of worker burnout all over. And this could be a sign of more corporate greed, more of the wealth gap expanding, or maybe this is the end of the wealth gap expanding, depending upon how you look at it. But let's not forget about the Great Recession, where millions upon millions of Americans, they basically just up and quit their jobs in search of something new, including a shift in priorities. So this was basically quit talk, where job quitters would post their stories, getting millions of views, making corporate America rethink a little bit. But let's just look at the numbers for a hot second. So from this Gallup recent poll or recent State of the Global Workforce report from 2022, only 21% of employees are actually engaged at work, and only 33% are actually thriving in their overall well-being. Additionally, you have 44% of workers reported that they felt stressed throughout their workday. Now, one user on TikTok said it pretty well. You don't really have to go extra above and beyond, because the companies, they really show you no love for doing that. And that is a problem. I wonder if you guys agree with this. Now, we're just trying to find out how to best make money in this economy. Am I right, guys? Whether it be from making money online, real estate investing, hacking your credit score, or getting Congress to stop sending our money overseas. But how about you guys? How's work? Can you relate to the idea of quiet quitting? Hit me up in the comments down below. Now, question is, could we see a form of quiet quitting from truckers? Quiet quitting from the truckers' standpoint would severely hamper our already devastated supply chain. Owner-operator truckers picketed recently the demand for payment for hours spent waiting for loads. This is on the backs of the AB 5 legislation affecting contractors and 1099 workers of trucking businesses. Truck drivers picketed outside of the Port of Baltimore in protest of very high wait times with no pay. This is affecting businesses and small businesses' bottom lines. Small businesses, they can't afford the financial hit of simply waiting without pay, waiting for loads. Meanwhile, containers on container ships, they remain backed up at ports like the Port of Baltimore and Long Beach ports. More than a dozen independent truck drivers protested in August that they wait for hours to get loaded, all without pay. And if truckers and railroad workers were to join this quiet quitting movement, this could be potentially devastating to our economy and our supply chain. Now, speaking of jobs and the economy, some experts are saying that the American economy didn't get the memo that it's supposed to already be in a recession. A brutal GDP report released July 28th showed the economy had contracted for a second quarter in a row. So this led some experts to insist that the much feared recession had already arrived. And in some ways, that makes sense. Since 1948, every period of back-to-back quarters of negative GDP growth coincided with a recession. And it's been quite a while since the report came out, and a lot has happened since that point. In fact, many believe that calling what we're in right now a recession is, at a minimum, it's premature. So yeah, well, the economy is definitely cooling off after last year's gangbuster growth. But so far, it doesn't really look like this qualifies as a recession according to some standards on whether we have a recession or not, with all the layoffs and bankruptcies that could potentially go along with that. Now, according to the chief economist over at Moody's Analytics, he said this is not a recession. He went on to say that it's not even in the same universe as a recession. He goes on to say that it's not even in the same universe as a recession. It's just patently wrong to say that it is. I don't know if I would agree with that. I don't know if you agree with that, but this is what the senior analytics or chief economist over at Moody's Analytics is saying about whether we're in a recession now or not. Now, the only thing signaling an ongoing recession, according to him, is the back-to-back quarters of negative GDP. But those GDP declines will eventually get revised anyway. And we're also seeing early indicators that GDP will turn positive this quarter. Of course, none of this means that the economy is healthy. Inflation remains too high. They say that inflation is cooling, but prices are still high. Here, you can check this out for yourself.
Allison, so there's a debate going on right now because the new CPI numbers came out. President Biden said inflation for July is at 0, which is true. And then Republicans attacked him for ignoring that inflation is up 8.5% for the year, which is also true. What do you take away from these numbers that we're seeing?
Yeah, John, I hate to both sides of this answer, but really President Biden and Republicans are both right in a sense. You've got 0% change from June to July. That's true. The CPI measures, a basket of goods that consumers are paying for, and the price did stay flat. So the 0% headline figure is right if you look month to month. Republicans are right that it is up 8.5% from last year, and that's still historically high. And not at all where economists or the Fed officials want us to be. So they're both right. I think the rhetoric kind of glosses over what is essentially still a really painful time for Americans who don't really care about what the CPI says. They care about how much it costs to fill their gas tank and go to the grocery store, which unfortunately is still much higher than it was last year.
Right. So inflation has been going up all year, but right now in July, it did not go up. Do you think that is a sign that we might have hit peak inflation? Is this, the start of a new economic era?
I'd love for that to be the case. Unfortunately, this is just one report. There are certainly signs that we're trending in the right direction. And a lot of economists might tell you that we've hit peak inflation and things are going to start to subside a bit now, in part because of the Fed's actions, in part because supply chains are slowly but surely starting to unwind. But I think it's important to remember that it's not going to happen overnight and prices are unlikely to come down to pre-pandemic levels. There's a bit of good news and bad news baked into all of that. The good news that you can focus on is that wages are still climbing, not enough to match inflation, but they're still going up. So we may not be paying in 2024 what we paid for groceries in 2021, but we'll all be making a bit more in theory.
Now, the economy is not out of the woods yet. A recession remains a very real risk, especially next year and in 2024. And that's when the economy will feel the full impact of the Federal Reserve's monster interest rate hikes, and it remains impossible that the economy stumbles so much in the months ahead that economists at the National Bureau of Economic Research, the official arbiter of recessions, eventually declared the recession began in early 2022. But for now, they're saying it's way too early to say that's the case. Now, the biggest issue with the recession argument is how hiring has ramped up dramatically in July. The United States also added a staggering 528,000 jobs last month, returning payrolls to pre-C-19 levels. An economy that's in a recession doesn't add 500,000 jobs in a single month. If anything, the job market's too hot. This is what they're saying. You see, the problem is that this will give the Fed the idea that it's all right to keep tightening and raising interest rates because the job market can handle it. But that's your credit card bill, your mortgage, and other consumer loans. These are all seeing major jumps from these federal interest rate hikes. Thanks, Jerome Powell. We'll just have to cross our fingers and hope that they know what they're doing. We'll definitely keep an eye on things. I mean, we're already seeing inflation cool off a bit. The biggest inflation headache, which is gasoline prices, food prices, real estate prices in the housing market, new car prices, used car prices, it's finally easing just a little bit. The national average for regular gasoline is now plunged by more than $1 since hitting a record high of $5.02 a gallon in mid-June on average across the nation. But beyond, gasoline, diesel, and jet fuel prices are falling. Diesel prices on fuel are, it's causing more and more inflation for anything that's being transported by diesel trucks, diesel burning trucks, truckers, tractor trailers, and you will see this in retail prices on the shelves. But falling fuel prices, falling diesel prices, this could ease the inflationary pressure on the rest of the economy. Some are even saying that we may see $3 gas around the corner. Pretty much every single state is enjoying the relief from higher prices. Even in states with high gas prices such as California, the average price is down by more than $1. Even states with high gas prices such as California, the average price per gallon for fuel is down by more than $1 per gallon since the peak in June. In 28 states, the average price of regular gas or regular fuel is $3.99 per gallon or less, Roughly 2/3 of 130,000 different gas stations nationwide are selling for less than $4 a gallon, and many are selling for a lot less than that. About 25% of stations or gas stations nationwide are selling gas for less than $3.50 a gallon. Experts are predicting that the gas prices are going to go even lower with students starting to return back to school and the summer driving season coming to an end. Now, their fearless forecast, by September or October, the national average of regular gas could be back below the $3.53 a gallon mark where it stood when Russia invaded Ukraine in late February. If a recession does happen, it would take a huge bite out of the demand for oil and gasoline. And as people lose jobs, bankruptcy, layoffs, people wouldn't need to necessarily commute to work because they don't have jobs. Or more than likely pull back on spending and more than likely as well travel less. Back in 2008, the average price of gas plunged 60% between a then record price of $4.11 a gallon in July and the end of the year, as the financial markets meltdown sparked the Great Recession and massive job layoffs. But recession or not, Americans are clearly hurting right now because the cost of living is just too high. Americans are now more and more living paycheck to paycheck. Real wages adjusted for inflation, they're shrinking. And although customer sentiment as measured by the University of Michigan has climbed 2 months in a row, it remains near record lows. Now, if this continues into a recession, we're going to see even more pain for Americans. A recession would likely involve the layoffs of not just hundreds of thousands, but potentially millions of jobs. Unable to make mortgage payments, unable to make rent payments, families would potentially face bankruptcy and foreclosure of their homes. And small, medium, and large-sized businesses would potentially go under and file bankruptcy. Insurance claims would be filed left and right. I really don't have the best feeling about this whole new Inflation Reduction Act either from Congress and what it means for small businesses and for working families across America. I mean, it looks like they're going to raise taxes on the vast majority of small businesses and working families. This legislation appears to be funded by personal income tax increases and on small businesses' incomes or working families making under $400,000 a year, which is roughly 98% of all Americans. Let's be honest, the armed IRS agents will be gunning for small businesses, for entrepreneurs, and for people who are making less than $400,000 per year. Now, in addition to that, increased funding for the IRS will likely be used to target small businesses or working families or both. The bill does provide $80 billion in additional funding for the IRS to hire more agents, 87,000 agents to be more precise, and these armed IRS agents will likely go after lower income taxpayers and small business owners making less than $400,000 a year. For more news and information on money, financial prepping, financial survival, make sure to drop a like for the video and also subscribe to the channel. Also want to thank all of the boots on the ground for dropping helpful insider information in the comments below.